Hi everybody, this is Ryan with my final response. My final thoughts. I listened to everyone else's posts and responses, and I had like a brief exchange with Katie and Aya. I hope I said you guys' names right. Sorry, but yeah, I listened to everybody else, and I kind of let those thoughts condense and thought about it for a bit. And now I have my final thoughts to present. So I think the strongest takeaway I had is that like the reproducibility crisis is not just like one isolated cause. It's a lot of things. It's a very multifaceted issue, and there's a lot going on that we have to kind of unpack and argue. And we got to see what the principal issues are and how to address those, and sort of how the remediative efforts on one side will affect the other side, right? So I think me and Katie had an exchange on if it was like more of an incentive issue or a cultural issue. I thought her perspective was very interesting because she kind of looked into the actual psyche of the um, scientists. She looked at them individually instead of just as like a general scientist people. And it was very interesting to go into her perspective and see how she kind of argued that they might feel some type of way about poorly rating other scientists. There might be some animosity that forms between them, thus like that could cause, some reproducibility issues across studies. I thought that was very interesting. I had kind of the opposite take, or not the opposite, but I framed it from another angle where I spoke on it about incentives and how I believe that funding kind of incentivizes scientists to perform researches and study in a certain way. And so I was kind of looking at it from the overall angle, like not overall angle, but I looked at it from the top down, and she sort of looked at it from the bottom up. So it was very cool how our two ideas sort of converged there. So Naya's argument was also interesting because she kind of framed hers as like a public trust sort of angle. She made the point that reproducibility is not just like the technical standard in the lab, but all those findings kind of affect the day-to-day to the greater population. So there has to be some way for the population to trust scientists and therefore like validate studies more freely, I suppose. That was really interesting. I thought another interesting kind of angle. And yeah, overall, I thought all the discussion was pretty cool, and I'm kind of now stepping back a bit and understanding what I was saying before. Initially, I approached this I read incentive culture and experimental design, and I sort of kind of picked the two, incentive and experimental design, because I thought culture was a derivative of incentives. But now I kind of understand how those are like separate things that both have some effect on reproducibility crisis. I also, in experimental design, I didn't really consider I was more so thinking if we were able to sort of standardize exact procedures in data collection, that might create a more reproducible environment of research. And I kind of realized that it's more important that we have sort of like a culture between scientists of like exchange of ideas and actual like in-person learning from each other as scientists. That kind of improves the reproducibility, because if you can see firsthand how the author of a paper went about his data collection, or his reasoning or logic behind his analysis, then it's much more powerful for you to be able to understand how to reproduce it yourself in a way that's aligns with that initial scientist's views. So it was a very interesting conversation over the past few days. It was quite enjoyable. The back and forth thinking on a topic, receiving someone else's thoughts, and then kind of reframing your philosophy on the situation. I think overall, sorry. So now, like what I think the most important action that we can take, I think, is we should sort of, within our own culture, as like the future generation, I suppose, of scientists, we should internalize these thoughts of like collaboration, and like sort of Collaboration that's like very intentional, I think, is the best way to remedy the reproducibility crisis. Anyways, this is once again Ryan Abdelaziz with my final thoughts. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day.